Hey, cool. Hello. Alright, I can hear myself. Got one or two of these more in me. Don't think I'm making many more videos after this. I think if you've actually watched me, you know what I'm about. I don't think this. Man, I grew up on the internet, and it's clearly being used as a tool for destruction by some of the worst people this planet has ever made. That being said, this final video is going to be on like the American tax-based dollar. Why I think, ostriching, putting your head in the sand with respect to politics or what is currently happening to your country and countrymen, simply sticking your head in the sand is as good as, if not worse than, behaving exactly like a Nazi. We're going to get to the finer logic of why that is in this video. Two, what do we do about it, like as a culture? What is it that our species essentially needs, what does it need to do to overcome this Nazi-based paradigm that has more or less shoved it downwards since God-given creation? Um, and then three, like I said, the final video I'll do is probably on Robert Moore. This guy kind of actually looks like Robert Moore, but he's a fuck. But he's a guy who kind of completed this, in my mind, young psychological model to the psyche. Like, what is it doing if it was untethered, unchained, and what is it supposed to be doing? What is it, so to speak, its divine purpose? Um, as you know, if you followed me at all, I don't think there is, so to speak, a divine purpose other than what humans can construct for themselves. I just don't think we give it up to the human enough when we consider divine notions. Like, humans can do a lot. For instance, when we look at like historical notions of Egypt, isn't it the case where people are like, did aliens build that? And it's just like, well, what a slap in the face to a non-white society that clearly did something this one cannot, right? Um, as I kind of move about our society, nothing really changes between state lines besides some rights and some views. But as I look at the houses, you can't help but think like of the three werewolves, or excuse me, the three pigs and the werewolf trying to blow their house down, right? Like the first one was made of straw, the second one is made of wood, which is all our houses. The third one was made of stone. How interesting how we've essentially come out with this American-based, pig-based analogy that suggests, yeah, let's keep the pigs enslaved to something that can essentially blow over or light on fire very easily, versus giving them the power to build something that actually lasts a while. And that's pretty much the American experience, right? Like we've essentially built this paradigm that suggests that enslavement to these wood-based homes, like 30, 50-year mortgages, whatever it is, we've consumed ourselves into the mythology that says that's a good thing to do, right? And we think that what we all want are these matchstick homes. It's like, oh, every American just simply wants free healthcare, a free wooden box. It's just like, actually, I would really like it if, not just Bernie Sanders, who people call a socialist for some reason. I would really like it if everyone hopped on board to the idea that in order for everybody to go along and get along, we've got to start raising the bottom line up. If the current prevailing world order, and I mean this, the people who are ostriching, the people who are clearly running our society off of a cliff, if the current prevailing world order doesn't have the ability to investigate its own hubris at this point, it's clearly gotten too big for its shoulders. But if it's proven that it can no longer do this, and we're starting to run against, societal notions like, what is the point of a society? Why is no one having children anymore? Why is it getting worse? Why are pedophiles not getting convicted? You know, it's just like when you start noticing all of these systemic issues that wouldn't just bring one presidency to its knees, but society. Like, we're talking about real systemic issues that we're being bombarded with that represent actual societal collapse. And now it's gotten to the point of famine, right? Many people in America are getting ready to starve to death just so they can continue to experience their own specific flavors of racism or ethnostatism or whatever they have done to their own mind at this point that has allowed them to other people to the point that whatever they are suffering through, whatever the promise of this next Holy Land is worth it, right? And that is the exact kind of constituent that is so dangerous with respect to the planet or what we want to do as a species in general. In short, Idiocracy was not meant to be a documentary. I do not understand, I don't know how to put this nicely, so I will not. There have been multiple people before me who have adequately defined the human condition. The current iteration of humans refuse to listen to what we have already learned about ourselves. The human condition problem has gotten so bad that it can be said that any American tax-based dollar is now simply going towards the project of putting bullets into brown babies' skulls somewhere across the world. And that is one of the power structures that our globe is consumed in. And that is clearly one of the power structures that is dying underneath some of the newer ones that simply want to come to the fold. I think China has made it pretty clear that it's done with imperialism. And that's why BlackRock's over there talking to them at all. So when we begin to think about how to reverse course just as a human-based society, the only way we are going to be able to do that is not just talking about what we all have in common. We have got to recognize the gross history that has all gotten us to this point. Anybody who has the privilege of anybody who has the privilege of making a video or maybe going to their daughter's high school basketball game, for instance, or really just experiencing any luxury that they get to experience here in Western society came at the cost of crushing literal baby skulls. And that's what I mean about complacency in evil. Too many people are like, well, I'm just going to stick my head in the sand, go back to work, knowing that this is an evil system, knowing that I can do nothing in hindsight, and you clearly can. You can clearly stop producing tax-based dollars that lead to baby-crushing skulls. Right? But nevertheless, we like to think that ostriching is somehow less morally repugnant than actually committing the acts themselves, and people need to understand this is just not logically the case anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I had to, and I've already defined it about 2.5 years ago at this point, the human race has lost the ability to use what is called the transitive property. We do not know how A equals B. And when that becomes the case, we form a lot of false equivalencies. Not just on what we think the issues are, but on who the enemies are. When we refuse to look at the history that has formed our society, we not only repeat history, we turn into something far more grotesque. It is as if we have consumed the prior zombie corpses of not just our victims, but our enemies. And this new iteration of mankind, again, historically with respect to its ancestors, is no longer a functioning human being. It is a teratoma of some kind that has figured out how to walk, talk, breathe, and have ideas. And it is so clear that our country has become infested not with vermin who think that states or land belong to certain skin colors. It's become infested with a kind of insect that really does believe in a kind of occult death worshipping, where they believe that the only way out of this is a kind of explosive event that hits the reset button. And of course, only the hubris of what is known as Malcolm X defined as the white man can think like this. Our forefathers more or less understood the metaphorical ballgame. However, they unfortunately came from the exact same pretenses as Israel. They are a foreign invasive species trying to dictate policy in a foreign land. And as you know, the world's trying to move on. However, the people with the biggest bombs don't seem to have the cognitive ability to do that. Unfortunately, what this is going to lead to, like I said, is mass starvation and death. I already know how my people in my social circles act when they get hangry. When that becomes the majority environment, people are going to construct a lot of false narratives, a lot of false targets. And the overall, we like to use the word archons to suggest that these are the people who are actually pulling the strings of reality. Well, that's a good abstract way to think about what's going on. The people who are the actual archons of these scenarios have already understood this. I have defined these constructed systems of stupidity as manufactured environments of stupidity. Again, the people pulling the strings of the global forces already know what's going to happen once they pull those strings. We already knew attacking whatever this choke point of resources is in the Middle East called the Strait of Hormuz, this thing we are now being rapidly educated on because it's now relevant to our immediate interests, right? It's just, we already knew that there were relevant choke points within the world that had control over certain, you know what I'm saying, our lives in so many words. And this person who's trying to stay out of prison for the Epstein files or whatever this Zeitgeistian narrative that we're simply trying to sell to the people as we continue to bomb brown kids is perpetrating the news. This is what was his name? Anyway, it was from Die Hard 4 where he called it a fire sale. Everything has already been sold. Your education, your 401ks, your political ability to behave. All of this has already been sold. You need to understand this. All of, anything we can look up in terms of, what's going on in terms of brainwashing, what's going on in terms of political optics. All of this is an illusion to make sure you continue to shove over your tax-based dollars into a system that is only proven to cover up child sex trafficking crimes, bomb brown children, and keep people like Trump out of prison. And I keep explaining to people that the reason that this country and Israel is a safe haven for pedophiles is because that is by systemic design. The reason James Tallarico's political opponent, this is not politics, again, this is a charades act, whatever they're doing, but political opponent is a convicted pedophile. I believe it just made the news recently that in Oklahoma that all political conservatives voted for underage marriage of some kind. And you're just like, this systemic push towards that is a consequence of this country's inability to hold the worst child touchers of us accountable. And there is no amount of whitewashing that is going to stomp people away from that perspective anymore. They have effectively woken up to the corruptness that is the American tax-based dollar. Now they're going to start really waking up. They're going to be like, okay, we don't even have capitalism anymore. Not just democracy. We don't even have capitalism. We don't even have our 401, we don't even have our bank accounts. Because everything has been forfeited to the pedophile regime. I don't know what the, so to speak, nuke on top of America will be for people to figure that out. But it's not going to be pretty. This is only going to end up in a civil war in the form of my skin color is better than yours. And we can already see that unfolding in New Jersey. It is just so fucking obvious what the powers that be want at this point. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just not, it's so, they're patronizing us on purpose because that's part of the victory laps being done. You see what I'm saying? It's not just that they're scared or they're terrified or they're worried out of their boots. They're not. People like Trump have made already how much money? You know, billions of dollars already just from being in the presidency. It's already been estimated that the war has costed the American people between 36 billion and 72 billion dollars. Which I believe, if I am understanding our healthcare system correctly, if we divide that number by 2.5 billion, we would have that amount times how many times we could have effectively have end medical debt in this country. We don't care about equal rights. When I say we, the general public, we don't care about our right to vote. Most of the general public simply cares about producing amount of money to give them enough, the illusion at this point, of leisure time. And they're not even getting that, right? They're stuck in their relative rat-based maze cycles of, what I got is better than yours, and the amount of pettiness that is just within our own society is... How do I explain that? When I look at Lebanon, or I look at some of these children over in the Middle East who are kind of more or less speaking at a much, much higher level than any adult can over here in America. But when I look at these children who aren't even over the age of 10, who have not just more reading literacy, but more political awareness than any American pig ever could, I think, not only where our society went wrong, I start to think, this is the danger, isn't it? The danger is that these countries that have been corrupted by foreign interests, they are so scared of what the humans can actually do should they decide to break away and simply work and think for themselves. And that's what this overall arching paradigm is scared of. Humans can clearly do it by themselves. However, if they start doing it by themselves, you get no more tax-based bombs that bomb brown people. And what an unfortunate reality that would be for the military-industrial complex. This species of humanity that is currently infested this side of this block, Israel, whatever you want to call these land masses that have been infested with this idea that says land belongs to a skin color. I don't know what the appropriate measures are. I don't know if we need to eradicate these people. I don't know if we need to put them into education camps. But I do know what needs to happen is that the ideas themselves need to be purged from the human race. I would like to end this video by stating, as I do with all my videos nowadays, is just because I have made a skin color based argument does not mean this argument is inherently racist. I know this gets wildly twisted over here in America because most of us are fucking stupid. Racism is about hierarchy of skin color. If you genuinely believe skin color should own things like land, then that is inherently racist. To simply suggest that, for instance, political behaviors, such as political crime, belong to the majority, in part to white skin color, this is not a racist argument. This is a skin color based argument. I hope the person who actually looks into these videos at this point has the ability to see that YouTube, Hulu, anything they can spend their money on and subscribe on, hopefully even they understand that most doctors, most lawyers, most people that they see as professionals are simply only there to bill you, not actually give you any understanding of the truth. They are not actually there to empower you in any way, to help you become more of a person. No, in fact, quite the contrary. They're there to rob you of your humanity. Might I suggest, again, I know I wanted to go like, full circle into Robert Moore towards the end, but maybe I will. How he would define the human psyche is that we are all lost in a lot of the dark magician sector of the psyche. We're all doing a lot of dark magician stuff. Believe it or not, you are just as evil as the people you are pointing fingers at on your screens, your phones, and your TVs. And all that would require for you to see that is a mirror.